So on today's episode of Attention Deficit Garage, we switch gears from the old Centaurian onto a new toy. Alright, time to get started on this project. I'd say this has been sitting here for a solid 5 or 6 years. Keep that. This is a 1982 Indy 500. Last year the triple 500 motor. It's in pretty rough shape, but they didn't make many of these, so it'd be a shame to just, completely let it go to scrap. This sled was a package deal I got with the John Deere liquefier. Motor rolled over nice when I got it, but upon disassembly it was pretty much trashed internally. It's got the cool looking seat covers that I think only the 82s had. Almost afraid. Well, no tarantulas. The goal with this sled is to turn it into an asphalt race sled. Since the chassis is already pretty beat, and basically it's not really worth doing a whole lot else with, might as well put it to some use. Today, we're after that nice gold anodized suspension. Hopefully it isn't cracked, because we're going to convert this over to an asphalt skid. Great, battery's dying. So here's the base of the suspension. I picked this up at a swap meet a few years ago for 40 bucks, I think, which is a good deal for all the extra idler wheels that are in there. Now the suspension itself is out of a cat, and it's got some pieces broken off, and that rail's cracked there in the center. So the suspension is really not good for anything, but we're going to transplant all these parts over to the Polaris suspension. As is so often the case, plans change and, a good deal pops up and you just can't pass it up. And when this 1993 Thundercat popped up on Craigslist and nobody bought it, well, I just had to give it a good home. And this should make a perfect sled for running on the asphalt. Now it may not look like a 93, but it is. It just has some different decals on it. It actually had 1995 style graphics, and I de-pumpkinized it and got rid of all the orange, so it's just got the green and the purple and a little bit of silver on it. I like it a lot better this way. And there's the whole reason for getting into this. Nothing like a big triple. I'm sure those stingers will be quiet. It's in surprisingly nice shape. Previous owners have definitely taken good care of it. Not the original seat, but Definitely a nice aftermarket. And the whole reason for this thing actually being out of service was it blew out the drivetrain. It blew out the drive chain. Luckily, it doesn't look like there was any major damage to the case, so a few new parts and hopefully that should take care of that. But we'll probably take everything apart and just give it a solid once over. Clutching is going to need some attention. Neither of the clutches are in mint condition, so we'll either have to rebuild them or go through them and figure something out. Now the track isn't in the best of condition either, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to replace it anyways. Well, there's been a few things happening since the last time I broke out the camcorder on this one. We yanked out that old snow track and got the suspension out. And there's something missing from underneath the hood. Well, this project went from, a quick tune-up and convert it into an asphalt sled into a pretty much complete overhaul at this point. I don't know what we're going to get into. Now, the pistons don't look bad, but you can tell by that shininess on there that, they've got some wear on them, where they've had, maybe one or two near-death experiences. And since the crankshafts for these motors are absurdly expensive, and they've got that whole counterbalance junk going on, I figured it's better to take it apart now, throw some crank seals in it, and, give it the once-over before scattering it apart on the track. I swear there's no way to take apart the cooling system on a sled like this without making a complete mess. And the oil injection, it's probably not long for this world. I kind of had to cut some hoses to get that motor out of there, and that kind of sealed the deal on that. So, I guess we're pre-mixing. I never really trusted that voodoo anyways. I really like whoever worked on this motor before. They put a trailer plug connector on here instead of the OEM connector. Who knows what happened to that? Part of the other reason for actually tearing this motor down is it was completely flooded with fuel when I went out to buy it. Now, that's normally not a big deal because, things flat out. But, like I was saying, this counterbalance shaft down here, it sort of siphons some excess oil from like a cavity in the cases down there. And if you're not getting enough oil to those bearings and they blow up, you're screwed. And a rebuilt crank or to rebuild one of those is like $1,200. I don't want any parts of that. So, being that there's probably a bunch of raw fuel that just washed out all the oil that are in those bearings, I'd rather just take the thing apart, put fresh crank seals and a new water pump mechanical seal in there just to be safe, and hopefully be done with it for a few years. So the motor fell apart when I put it up on the workbench. Things weren't looking terrible in there, but however, the pistons were worn quite a bit shiny, and from what I could see through the exhaust port, they definitely weren't new, so worth tearing it down and giving it the once over. Now the water pump was nasty inside. You can see all the rust and scale built up in there. This thing might have been the original water pump. Definitely living on borrowed time.